We might begin. So I'd like to welcome everyone. This is the third Monday night introduction to Buddhist meditation that I've been giving. And as announced in the newsletter, my main topic is the 4 immeasurable thoughts. And there's a handout which is available. Some of you may already have taken in previous weeks, but it's here for you, which has the 4 immeasurable thoughts. And they're a fundamental framework for meditation, and particularly what we call analytical meditation, where we directly work upon our attitudes. And from a Buddhist perspective, this is crucial because it's our attitudes which block us from apprehending reality in an appropriate or clear way, but it's also our attitudes when transformed that can open us out to the most extraordinarily refined and skillful personal development or evolution. So when our attitudes become sedimented and kind of overly concretized because we're petrified of change, we face all kinds of obstacles of our own making. And prejudices are an obvious example, aren't they? However, if we develop very fluent and fluid attitudes, ones that are able to respond very quickly and very skillfully to experience as it unfolds, because we've explored and even rehearsed various situations in the space of our meditation practice, then we'll find that we'll have ways of engaging dynamically and creatively with situations and indeed people. So the 4 immeasurable thoughts are primarily focused upon others, and more specifically they're focused upon my relation to others. So we're all my relation to others. How can we begin to radically overhaul the way we respond or even are aware of others? So when Buddhism talks about immeasurable love, for example, which is the first immeasurable, it's requiring, or what's the word for it, kind of inviting us to develop a love which is extended and can be extended to each and every sentient being without exception, spontaneously, upon apprehending them. How remarkable is that, even as a thought? As soon as someone appears, if I have immeasurable love, I automatically have the intention to bring about their happiness and well-being by utilising my body, speech and mind for that purpose. If I have immeasurable compassion, any sentient being I encounter, I immediately wish from the very depths of my heart to take away their suffering and its causes. So much so that they'll be free of suffering and its causes, and I'll be able to use my body, speech and mind skillfully and spontaneously to bring that about, to help bring that about. So I become an agent of benefit, in other words. Immeasurable joy is when I encounter another person, I don't just wish for their temporary or immediate well-being, but I see their situation in a much greater scale, and recognising there are future rebirths, and the rebirths we encounter are dependent on the way in which we engage ourselves, conduct ourselves. I wish that they meet with ultimate happiness and joy in each and every future lifetime. So this is, a greater joy, a greater happiness than the one of the first immeasurable, in the sense that I'm not just wishing their happiness, but I'm wishing them to experience the supreme bliss of liberation. And in the fourth immeasurable, which is the immeasurable equanimity, I am levelling out the ground so that as soon as a being appears to me, I regard them with the same fervent purpose, the same wish for their well-being, irrespective of how they might be appearing to me. So this last immeasurable, which we'll tackle next week, is a crucial one, and I couldn't help but think as I was sort of making my way here tonight that I'm going to miss Stan Grant's last comparing of Q&A on the ABC, because as we probably know, he's resigning because of his continuous experience of racism following his comments that would, maybe this is always immaculate, judicious, scholastic sort of discretion about the role of the colonisation of Australia in terms of Aboriginal suffering. So he gets vilified for taking that position by some fervent monarchists who believe that they should break him at the knees so that he can't walk. He should be silenced. So I just mentioned this. This is sort of a way in which the lack of equanimity in our culture becomes endemic and kind of acceptable behaviour. So when we like and dislike on our sort of social media, to what extent are we sort of reinforcing these states of non-equanimity where we're unable to see who's actually there in front of us? So from a Buddhist perspective, equanimity is the crucial foundation for the generation of any positive attitude towards others. Because if we only have love towards those we feel are very close to us, we'll be unable to extend that concern for the people who are next to the people that are closest to us, the family next door, for example. And so Buddhism takes our love for our most cherished close person as the model to be extended outwards until it embraces each and every being. So as we present the four immeasurables, I'm not asking us to rub out our love for our special ones at all, because that is our kind of current experience of our optimum best practice. That's what we're managing to do. At least we're managing to really care for one other person, perhaps. So based on that capacity, what if we could extend that to the next person and to the next person and then to the next person, infinitely outwards? So when Buddhism talks about an immeasurable love or compassion or joy or equanimity, it's referring to a state of mind which is a form of mental absorption. And by that I mean that it's a especially intense state of profound, concentrated focus, which has that aspect clearly. So it's not a normal state of love, which comes and goes. Immeasurable love is like a gigantic force that flows continuously and effortlessly in dependence on a state of advanced concentration. So in order to begin to work towards such experiences, we need to rehearse, which is the word I used earlier. We practice in meditation so that when we next meet our not as much liked person, we have an inkling of what it might be to transform that attitude to one of concern for them, rather than dismissal or rejection or even outright hatred, unfortunately. So it's very, very exciting to consider the therapeutic, dynamic capacity of these meditations to overhaul our customary egotistical fixations. So Buddhism doesn't have a problem with us being a person, and it doesn't have a problem with us being a person wishing to have happiness and not to suffer. But it does have a problem if my wish to be happy and not to suffer blocks or obliterates my awareness of the equal right and need of each and every other being to have happiness and not to suffer. And so you can see here that this overhaul will reach to the very foundations of our habitual modus operandi as we navigate our world, and particularly our social encounters. So we'll do our initial meditation, and then I'll do a little bit more introduction, and then we will actually explore the meditation technique of immeasurable love further, because we did begin that last week. And I'm going to then move on to immeasurable compassion, and then introduce the method of giving and taking meditation. So it's going to be quite a full evening from that point of view. But these are techniques that once you've heard about, or once you've heard of them, they have the capacity to capture your interest in a way that will enable you to begin to develop an understanding on your own as you encounter certain situations. So last week we actually very bravely extended love towards our enemy. And I described the enemy as our least liked person. Very challenging definition of an enemy, isn't it? Least liked person. And so the kinds of emotional turmoils or conflicts that might arise at that moment of that meditation are incredibly important and valuable to investigate further, aren't they? Because Buddhism is going to suggest that it is the capacity of that person to apparently irritate us that induces our label unlikable, which we then project onto them. And that projection is a problem because it's arising out of our egotistical attitude. Don't interfere with me mentality. Don't interrupt my well-being, my happiness. And if you do, I will possibly attack and retaliate and inflict harm. So we don't need to go very far to get examples of this. If some of us are in very close relationships, we know that when we have an argument with our loved one, how at that moment our loved one ceases to appear attractively to us, and they can even appear to be a kind of multi-fanged demon. Has anyone had that experience? And on the basis of that appearance, we then feel justified, horrifically, in generating a negative mind towards them to somehow subdue that monstrosity that is appearing to us. So Buddhism is going to propose that that whole scenario is grounded on a misappropriated projection, which is totally misreading the reality of that situation. So we're not saying that that person isn't perhaps antagonising or abusing us, maybe they are, but how we respond to that is the crucial challenge. And so in Shantideva's Guide to a Bodhisattva's Way of Life, there are many, many techniques presented for handling those sorts of situations. And the first example Shantideva gives is pretend you're a lump of wood. Don't react at all if you can't handle your reaction at that moment because you're so upset. At least don't act. So we say this to children, don't we, when they're upset? Go to your, cool off, go to your quiet spot and I'll talk to you later. Meaning when you've calmed down. But do we allow ourselves that kind of space? So if we can begin to dissolve the structures of our egotistical operations, we'll suddenly discover a whole new freedom, a space, a spaciousness with which to respond skillfully and perhaps from many directions to best handle that situation. Perhaps we're being abused by our partner, for example. So these are incredibly valuable topics, and we can think and talk about them for a long, long time, but my role is really only to introduce them because I don't have the scope in the short space of time we have together to do more than that. So let's begin with our first meditation, and we're going to pick the breath. And this is a crucial object for meditation because it's immediately available. So as I've done in previous weeks, we spend some moments establishing our current position, meaning becoming aware of ourselves right now, just as we are. So this will involve letting go of all of our connections to our daily affairs and activities, no matter how important or compelling they might be. Becoming aware of ourselves sitting on our spot, right here, right now. And now for a few cycles of in and out breath, we perform a visualization to help relax firstly our body and then our mind. So becoming aware of any tension or stress or tiredness in the body. Let it go with the out-breath in the form of smoke, which tumbles away over the horizon totally evaporating, leaving not even a molecule of trace. Then, with the immediate in-breath, visualize radiant light pouring into our body, soothing, relaxing, healing. And as it permeates our body, it releases deeper and more subtle levels of stress or tiredness or illness and so forth, which then leave with the out-breath in the form of smoke. Then again, the radiant light pouring in. So just work with our own particular situations for a few moments. Then, without losing the flow of our awareness, focus upon our mind. And again, we let go of any mental anxiety or stress, fears, depression and so forth. With the out-breath in the form of smoke, then inhaling radiant light which pervades our mind, soothing, relaxing, opening our mind to its natural spaciousness. This then enables us to let go of more subtle mental problems and tensions which leave with the out-breath. So we continue on our own, working with our particular situations. This method, of course, is very, very beneficial when we are encountering mental challenges of various kinds. If we're experiencing many distracting thoughts, then we let these go with the out-breath and inhale a concentrated, stable mind, one able to remain on its object of choice. Now we continue with the visualization without distinguishing the body and the mind. Just any tension, tiredness and so forth that is present, let it go with the out-breath and inhale its opposite. Just working with our situation in this way. Now we move on to the next phase of the meditation, which is establishing a positive motivation for the meditation itself. So we can do this via the 4 immeasurables, just feeling from the depths of our heart how wonderful it would be if all sentient beings, without exception, had happiness and its causes. May they have happiness and its causes. May I, the meditator, be able to bring this about. Please, compassionate Buddha, inspire me to be able to do this. How wonderful it would be if all sentient beings without exception were free of suffering and its causes. How wonderful this would be. May I, the meditator, be able to bring this about. Please, compassionate Buddha, inspire me that this might be so. May all sentient beings without exception experience blissful joy and the supreme bliss of liberation. How wonderful this would be. May I, the meditator, be able to bring this about. Please, compassionate Buddha, inspire me that this might be so. How wonderful it would be if all sentient beings, without exception, abided in equanimity, free from attachment and hatred, free from holding some close and others distant. How wonderful this would be. May I, the meditator, be able to bring this about. Please, compassionate Buddha, inspire me that this might be so. So with this extensive motivation in place, we now simply alight our attention upon the breath. Observing the breath coming and going. Observing the space between an in and an out breath, and an out and an in breath. By being aware of each portion of the breath in this way, we generate the capacity to be continuously aware of our object, the breath. So in order to do this successfully, we don't squeeze the mind by trying too hard to focus. Nor do we act in a kind of lackadaisical manner, not really attempting to focus at all. So somewhere there in the middle, there is a firm but relaxed mode of apprehending the mere flow of the breath, without losing contact with it from moment to moment. So just explore in our own way, and when we've become vividly aware of our object, the breath, gently and continuously remain in contact with the breath. As soon as the mind wanders away, meaning we forget our object, we need to replace our focus upon the breath. Just as we might return a child who has wandered from the footpath onto a road, back onto the footpath. We do this with a swift and definite, skillful hand, and continue the meditation without any fuss, further ado. Is our mind upon the breath. Checking. Now we let go of the breath as our main object, just becoming aware again of our body and our mind, just as it is. Becoming aware of our environment, our location in the room. We can stretch or wriggle or whatever we need to do. So the time is moving along pretty quickly. I thought to just raise one issue. Sometimes when we're doing this meditation, we feel that we re-experience stress in the space of the meditation. Has anyone had that experience? No? How wonderful. Because one of the things that can happen is that as we become more aware of our object, we become more sensitive to our situation, our experiential reality, if you like. And so if we have very, very subtle levels of stress that we've been lugging around with us, maybe not just today, but for weeks or months on end, so it's become a kind of familiar status that we don't even notice as peculiar anymore because it's so deeply habituated. Doing this meditation will begin to make us a little bit more aware of the fact that we are indeed under some stress or pressure. So the reason I mention this is that many people, when they have this experience, give up meditation because they think it's making them uncomfortable. I've got a friend who says he can't meditate at all because he gets really fidgety and really stressed when he tries to relax in meditation. So this is really a misunderstanding of what is happening in the meditation itself. So that kind of experience of stress that he's talking about, as though it was a tumultuous uprising of trouble when he sits to meditate, is merely his increasing awareness of what's going on there anyhow. And he hasn't enabled him or allowed himself to focus sufficiently to actually recognise that fact. So it's worth mentioning that. So you cut through those experiences very, very gently and very firmly by continuing your meditation, in this case on the breath. You don't get sidetracked. You simply acknowledge that yes, there is some tension arising, or my mind seems to be more distracted than ever before. Again, you're recognising the chronic state of habitual distraction that we're experiencing, because our mind is going after all its objects, left, right and centre, continuously. And so when we're holding one object, we're defying that habitual tendency of our mind flying off into every direction. It's almost like there can be a tug of war occurring. So the way to resolve that struggle is simply, purely and relaxedly maintain our focus on our chosen object, the breath. So there's enormous power in that simplicity of the technique. It becomes a profound technique in this way. And I think many of us will have noticed when we're doing even the meditation for a short period, already there's a quietness and a stillness that emerges in our experience. So this is very, very precious, because it means that we're relaxing in a new way. We're not relaxing because of our relationship to stimuli in our environment. We're allowing ourselves to relax from within. And this is a much more reliable form of relaxation than we've ever allowed ourselves to have before. Because if we can develop it sufficiently by developing a robust meditation practice, we'll be able to navigate and handle external trauma and pressures in very, very powerful and skillful ways, because we've got a stable meditation practice. I mention that as inspirational prospect for us. Now we're going to move on to immeasurable love now, and in Geshe Doge's commentary, Geshe Doge is the resident Tibetan Lama here, who's been teaching at Tara Institute since 1984. And so this particular teaching was given in 1987. I had the opportunity of being there for that, and it left a very indelible impression on me. So that's why I'm wanting to share it tonight. And Geshe Doge said that the aspect of love, immeasurable love, is the wish to give happiness. And so the emphasis here is on giving. So love and giving are two ways of talking about the same thing. This is really quite remarkable to consider. Not giving trouble and misery, but giving happiness to someone is love. And so the aspect of love, immeasurable love, is that it enables the maturation of the continuum of the object. So to cut that, or to bring that back to something sort of immediately understandable, if we genuinely love someone, we are providing them with the maximum conditions for their own evolution to happiness. This is remarkable to think about. If we have the opposite of love, say it's directed towards a child, we stunt and thwart and obstruct that little individual's capacity to grow and develop in creative, stable ways. Don't we? So by swinging our attitude around to generating immeasurable love, we are maximising the capacity of each and every object, each and every person in this case, to find their own resources to achieve happiness in the optimum fashion. So this is very exciting to think about in this way. Because when we say, may I give happiness to all beings, I shall, please, compassionate Buddha, inspire me that I can do this, we're not saying that we're going to somehow magically force other people to become happy. We're actually saying that we're going to give them the space to generate happiness themselves by not interfering or destroying that capacity through the projection of negative states of mind from me, from myself. And so immeasurable love has the capacity to prevent us from harming others. This is really powerful to consider. So we're going to select in this meditation a loved one. And as I mentioned earlier, by loved one I mean someone to whom we feel incredibly close. If we knew that something terrible was going to happen to them, we would immediately be doing everything within our capacity to support and help them. And so in my own case, I found it very effective to pick someone very close who was facing a life-threatening diagnosis. So the reality of this meditation really came home to me when one of my closest friends was diagnosed with ovarian cancer. So I visualised my friend in the space in front, and then according to the technique, using my power of imagination, my creative power of visualisation, I imagined that I gave her a completely healed body. So I gave my body with love through the meditation in the form of a wish-fulfilling body, so that when it was received by my friend, her body with its afflictions, its sufferings, was transformed into a radiant, completely whole body. Now you might say, this is just wishful thinking, it could even be crazy to think this way, but it's not. Because when we next meet our friend, we'll find that our relationship with them will be naturally very warm and open. because we're navigating the reality of their situation from a very loving, caring perspective. And so we know this from parents' love for their children. You know, I had cancer myself. When I was in at the bone marrow transplant unit, there was one mother there with her daughter who had leukemia. And I heard the mother say to another person in the ward, if only I could give my body, my healthy body, to my daughter and take away her sick body, how wonderful that would be. She was doing the immeasurables through the force of her love for her daughter. How wonderful is that? And so what we're attempting to do in this meditation is to at least generate a modicum of that love that that mother had for her daughter towards our chosen object from our own side in the meditation. And so when we say we transform our body into a wish-fulfilling body, we mean that whatever kind of body is needed, our body becomes for them. So this is very, very special. Because if we're meditating on someone who is trapped, for example, we imagine them being free and so forth. So we work with the ingredients of the situation. So are there any questions about that technique before we explore it a little in meditation? No questions? Oh, sorry, go ahead.
What do you mean by trapped?
I just mean if someone was in prison,
Okay.
or I was thinking of an animal
Okay.
in an abattoir.
Yeah.
There are many, because in Buddhism we're not just looking at humans, we're looking at the whole span of living sentient beings. And so people in war zones are trapped. So that's what I meant. Yeah, it's really good to pick vivid examples, and then we then become more capable of expanding outwards. Yeah, so let's do that. And does everyone feel that they've got an object that they can immediately choose? I just want to raise one little side issue, or prospect. We can meditate on a parent, for example, who is deceased in exactly this way. Because from a Buddhist perspective, they are somewhere, and with some body. So we wish them all the perfect conditions for their physical happiness and their mental happiness, wherever they might be. So we're not sort of blocked by sort of an immediate separation in this way. So picking a parent, it can be very, very powerful, of course, because they've nurtured us. And so in this meditation we've got an opportunity of repaying their great kindness by nurturing them now. So I just raise that as a possibility.
Or a very nice cat that you
Yes, exactly. Yeah, absolutely. So just as we did with the breathing meditation, create the space in front in an open way, and then visualize this person. Becoming aware of their situation or even their predicament. We now feel that through the force of our immeasurable love, we transform our body into a wish-fulfilling body which we give to them, granting them everything they need. So if it is a body that is afflicted with an illness, for example, we offer them even the healthy body parts that are needed to restore their health. Feeling that their body becomes the perfect basis for achieving happiness, both temporal and ultimate, in this lifetime and in all future lifetimes, leading right up to full enlightenment. We can also visualize that we're offering all the provisions and resources they need to accomplish these aims: food, shelter, safe environments and so forth. Whatever they need in terms of resources, both now and in the future, to achieve both temporal or temporary and ultimate happiness, right up to the point of full enlightenment. And we can also give away our imprints of virtue on our own mental continuums. So the conditions for our own future happiness, we give to them with absolute generosity. We can even visualize them as radiant Buddhas, having accomplished all their goals. Now see if we can expand the same meditation now to embrace each and every sentient being in whatever form they appear. Giving wish-granting bodies, resources, and virtues. Feeling that all their sufferings dissolve away without trace, and all happinesses are accomplished, both temporary and ultimate, right up until full enlightenment. And with this we conclude the meditation. So that's really just a sample of the technique, but it is very, very precious to remember the technique and apply it when we are faced with someone or a group of people who are particularly undergoing trouble and difficulties. And so in this way the meditation becomes very, very direct, very real. So the four immeasurables on one level seem to be abstract and even lofty, but this would be a misunderstanding of their purpose and their power, because it's to do with navigating real situations as they arise. And so as we did last week, we didn't have time to do tonight, but next time our enemy appears, wish them happiness, freedom from suffering, immeasurable joy, and immeasurable equanimity, without any mediation or blockage generated by an egotistical, self-cherishing or self-serving attitude. So these techniques work on transforming the way people appear, but they also work on the way we appear to ourselves. So talk about being trapped. We are trapped in ourselves by our habits, and that's blocking us from our potential for change and transformation. Yeah. So that was also a dedication. So you'll remember at the beginning when we were doing the breathing meditation, we made a motivation for all beings to be happy. So by doing the meditation in this way, we've actually explored fulfilling that. And we should feel some sense of delight. So as Geshe Doga emphasised in his teachings, if we can generate the four immeasurable thoughts, we will actually eliminate our capacity to harm others, both now and in the future. This is an incredibly valuable thing to be able to do. Because unless we can start here, there's no hope, is there, that we'll have any meaningful societal change. We have to work with this one. So next week I'll introduce immeasurable compassion, where we take suffering upon ourselves. And I'm going to be introducing that with a very important first meditation object. Can anyone guess what it is? ourselves. We take our own suffering on ourselves and destroy our self-cherishing attitude, which is stopping us from looking after ourselves. And the self-cherishing attitude dissolves away, and in the space opened out by its dissolution, we generate a great wave of compassion towards ourselves. Because we want to look after ourselves fully and properly, perhaps for the first time. So if we can't do that with ourselves, how on earth are we going to do it for someone else? So it's really, really extraordinary that this technique introduces ourselves as its first object for that very, very important reason. And so if we're feeling unhappy or depressed, take on that feeling, dissolve it in the heart, and then send out a mind that's free of that burden, if you like. And so in this way we begin to be able to work with ourselves in a very, very potent way. And that then gives us the basis to begin to work for others in the same way. So thank you very much for attending, and I look forward to seeing you again. Thank you. Oh, the handout's here for anyone who needs.